everybody, this is Diana at Heartfelt Creative. Welcome to my sewing room. Today I'm going to show you what I call magic piecing. I'm sure there's probably another name for it, but to me it's kind of like magic. If you're already a quilter and you piece your quilts traditionally, that's great. This technique actually I probably wouldn't use for a full-size quilt, but it's great for pillows, wall quilts, baby quilts, and smaller pieces. And if you're someone new to quilting and the idea of piecing makes you still a little bit nervous, then this technique should help you out. So what I'm going to show you today is this flower basket block that was made, and we're going to use the magic piecing technique, what I call the magic piecing technique. So this can be done though with any quilting block that is all squares. Okay, I'm going to set that aside. And what you're going to need is basically a base layer that is fusible. So I use Pellon's SF101, especially if I'm going to put it into a quilt or a pillow or something that I don't want to wash very much, or if I'm going to put it into a baby pillow. The reason I say you probably don't want to use this technique for full quilt, although I have seen people that have used this idea in a full quilt, is this really gives your block some, heft is not the right word, but some true stability. It's a stabilizer, so some true stability, but it makes your seams and things a little bit more bulky. So for a full-size quilt, you might want to do more of a traditional piecing, but if you're making something smaller, more manageable, this can be a fun thing, a fun way to do it. So I use SF101, or you could also, so SF101 is a Pellon product. I'm not supported or anything by Pellon. It's just that none of the tools or gadgets and things that I use in my videos, I'm not paid to talk about them or anything like that. It's just what I use because it's the product I like. So Pellon SF101 is a fusible stabilizer, and I believe this one, it's also called Shape Flex. You may have heard of that. But it's like a piece of white fabric, and then on the back it's a little scratchy. That's the fusible side, the glue basically. You could also use, this is a Pellon product too, it's called 911, and it is fusible on one side. Can you see the little fusible dots? And it feels and looks more, it's more of a heavier interfacing. It's called featherweight, but I actually find this to be heavier than the SF101. I think it's just because they're made differently. This is more of a paper-like stabilizer, but it's not something that rips easily. See, I can. I actually use this a lot for, I used to make a lot of t-shirt quilts for people, and I used this to back all their t-shirt pieces. Made them really nice and stable. So this is a thought if you have like that in your stash already. The Shape Flex SF101 is great. Any kind of fusible stabilizer like that will work. And you're going to need to cut the piece an inch or two all the way around larger than your square. I always like to cut larger, and then I can trim down, because if I cut it the right way and I get off, then it makes all the edges kind of floopy. So yeah, cut it an inch and a half maybe all the way around, and we'll trim it down in the end. So I'm now going to take my camera and focus it downward so that you can see how this is done. There, great. So I'm going to lay out my blocks. You'll have your blocks for your, for your quilt piece, and you want to lay them out so that they touch or they could be ever so slightly apart, but you do not want them to overlap, okay? And I'm not giving you, basically, I'm not telling you how this block is done. This block is made with a disappearing pinwheel. But this is just the idea, because you can do this with any block that you like. So this is just an example. I got a little piece. Need to clip off there. And there we go. So you have all of your pieces. Mine actually need to be pressed a little bit better, but they're going to be here in a minute. So you've got all your pieces for your block laid out. Again, they can be a little bit apart from one another, not more than 1/4 of an inch, but so they could be a little bit apart, or they could touch one another, but they cannot overlap one another, and you'll see why here in a minute. I'm going to set my sewing machine down here on the ground for a moment, and I'm going to bring over my great big huge 17 by 24 inch pressing mat. I love this thing. I used to have one that's just the next size down from this, and although I liked it, it was really old and got really just kind of manky. So you may want to lay this all out on your pressing mat or your ironing board, whatever you like, so that you don't have to slide it and move it. But I'm just trying to, there, get my pieces nice and put together. That one might be apart a little bit too much. There we go, perfect. So because I don't want to get any of the glue, and the glue is facing up at the moment on my iron, I just take a little piece of muslin and kind of go from block to block when I press. Now, you can use a regular pressing cloth if you like. I don't for this piece, only because if my blocks move around a little bit under the pressing cloth, I want to see that and be able to fix them before I move on. So all we're going to do now is take, I just want to cover up the seams, and you're going to give it a good press, which is basically fusing your blocks to the underlayment, to the stabilizer, the interfacing. I'll go back and do my end bits here in a bit. Now, you should follow the instructions for fusing. Really, I should be picking up and pressing rather than sliding. But I've been ironing for a lot of years, and sliding my iron is just an old habit. But there, see, if you can see, by using this piece, I can just adjust things and get them where I want them before I put this on and then press. If I had a whole cloth covering it, I might miss something that got moved around. And I'm sure you could always just fix that, but let's not have to do it more than once, shall we? If you're like me, doing it more than once does not always make you a happy person. Unless, of course, it's something you want to make more than once. Okay, so we're almost done here. Now, I will admit this is not my original idea. I saw it on a video at some point in my life or in a class or something, I'm sure, but it's not something that is a patented idea. I've seen lots of people do it, and I just thought that it would be a fun way, just a fun little technique to learn. Like I said, you can always, you know, do your traditional piecing, of course, but this is just fun. Now, like I said, if you do this and you're going to make a block this size, and I think this ends up being like 16 inches or something, and make it into a pillow cushion, this technique actually works really well for that because the interfacing gives it a really good stable backing. All right, let me bring my sewing machine back up. So we've got this all down. Now, you know, like that's up a little bit. That's not a big deal, but you want to basically make sure your piece is pressed because in the end, we're going to go through and press this all really well. But then you want to start on one side and fold right there between those two blocks, okay? Then you're going to take this to your sewing machine and you are going to stitch 1/4 inch all the way down. Let me bring my sewing machine in. There, I think you can see it. Here, let's bring this down a little. There, that's probably better. So now, if you notice, I haven't trimmed off the excess yet, and I do that at the end. And I'm just sewing 1/4 inch all the way down. Bring my machine over. Let me just show you. And voila! You have pieced that whole row together. Just like magic. So let's keep going. So now we're going to roll this and fold it on this next row. And when I do this, when I fold it, I just kind of use my fingers to make sure that my fold is right there between my squares. Now you know why you don't want it to be them to be more than 1/4 inch apart, because when you fold it and do that 1/4 inch, that's the space. If it was more than 1/4 inch apart, you would have raw seams showing through. So now we're going to go and we're going to sew down this one. I won't bring my machine back over. Well, yeah, it probably might be helpful for you guys if I did that. Bring my machine back over. And I don't bother to clip these together at this point because that fold stays pretty nicely done. But if it makes you feel better to put a little quilting clips or some pins down your piece, that's fine. That's entirely up to you, whatever your preference is. Now we have all of our vertical seams done. There and there. Now what we're going to do is turn it 90 degrees. Now you're going to say, should we go and should we press it? Yes, that's a great idea. Except I press it at this point from the back side, not the front, because I don't want glue to get on my iron. And you'll notice your seam there, it's a little thick, right? So you want to make sure to give it a good press. If you have a steam iron, you could use a little bit of steam You might use a little bit of best press or magic sizing or anything like that that you normally use when you press your seams. And I press one to this side and one to the outside. You don't have to be as picky as when you do traditional piecing when you piece this way, because you're not going to see the dark or the light fabric through the other side. Alrighty, let's do this one. Actually, I'm going to turn this around. There. Actually, I'm doing it in the same. With this, I said I was going to do the other one this way, but it wants to go in this direction, so I'm going to let it go in that direction. It's not super important that they go in a specific direction at this point, and if the fabric wants to go in a certain way, then it's okay in this one to let it do that. And as I go as well, if I see places where my blocks aren't completely fused down, then this is a good time that you can give them a little bit of a press as well. Oops, there we go. Okay, oops. Okay, so we've given it a good press. You can see we got there. So now we're going to start on this side and we're going to fold this way. Now here's where I do use a couple of clips, and I love quilting clips, Wonder Clips, whatever you call them. I know Wonder Clip is a brand name, but all quilting clips to me are Wonder Clips. So I put a clip at each seam. Because they're a little thicker and bulkier there, I find that it just helps keep it laying down nice. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam right there. Let's bring the machine back in. Okay. You can use pins as well. If you don't have clips, you certainly don't have to run out and purchase anything. Now, I'm going to tell you that if you don't have SF101 or 911 or a fusible backing stabilizer, take a piece of muslin that is a couple inches larger and maybe use a basting spray, a fabric basting spray. I'll take that clip out and just give them a little spray and lay them down the same way that I laid these down on the fusible, and then you can still do the same thing and have the same effect. Because I certainly don't want you to run out and buy something new if you don't have it in your stash. And especially right now when a lot of us are under restrictions for because of COVID-19, I certainly don't want you to go out and get something and get ill. I would feel horrible about that. So here we go. I'm going to just take and snip off my threads there. So I have my 1/4 inch seam, and look. Now I have those all pieced together, and look how all my corners match up. Isn't that amazing? Now I'm going to do one more time. I'm going to fold over on this edge. Make sure it's all nice. I'm going to take 2 clips again and clip that seam and that seam. Bring my machine back over. And I will admit that those seams, when you go over them, are a little bit thick. And so it does make them a little bit bulky at this point. And that's one reason in a larger quilt, this might not be the most feasible option for piecing. But like I said, it's a fun little technique for smaller pieces. And as I said, I have seen people that have done big, huge quilts with this technique. So now there's my flower. There's here, I'll turn so you can see it. There's my flower basket, and it's all pieced together. And to piece it together, I only have 4 seams in this whole project, instead of a seam between each block and a seam between each row. So it gets rid of your all that piecing. So let me bring over all that seaming. Let me bring over my big mat, my big pressing mat, because now, actually, first, let's go ahead and trim this down. I don't use really long rulers very often, because I find that with a 3 by 12 inch ruler, I can do strip piecing, I can cut yardage, anything I want with it fairly easily. And I find that the longer the template, the more you are likely to have a mistake, or not a mistake, but an accident and hurt yourself. And I wouldn't want that. So, oh, it looks like when I originally did that, I was off a little bit, so I need to really square that one up. So I'm just going to trim up my edges. And then we do the final, after we've got all of these trimmed up, we're going to do the final pressing. Oops. See how that went like that on me? That's why I don't like using large ones. They're very hard to control. Hang on. This isn't right. There we go. That's better. I have a new blade in my cutter, but it's deciding to be persnickety today. So let's line this up. There we go. Get that all nice and lined up. Pitch and one more edge. There's just a teeny tiny little bit over here. If you use really long templates, you might seriously consider using rotary cutting gloves, the ones that are like knitted mesh, so that if you cut, it slips, you don't cut your hand off. All right, so there it is. Now on the back, as you can see, we've got a little bit of bulk there. So let's do some stuff with that to take care of it. See right here on the seam, I'm just going to make a snip right there, not across the seam line, but up to the seam line. And I'm going to do that on each side of that vertical seam. And then I'm going to do it again here down at this vertical seam. This allows for me to really, like if I needed to turn my seams in different directions, I could, but it allows this to be a little less bulky there. And then I just really take and give it a really good press to get these pressed down from this side. Now I'm going to flip it over to the pretty side, and I'm going to do a little seam pressing here too, just to make sure that really didn't need too much. I'll turn this off. And there we have a flower basket that was pieced using magic piecing. So I hope that you found that interesting and maybe fun, and maybe we'll give it a try on a block. It really is very easy. Just remember, don't have your blocks overlapping, but they may touch or they may be a little bit apart. So, you know, you don't have to sit there and go, oh, I have to have it, you know, like that. No, just kind of lay them out, kind of make sure. Press, snip your seams to take a little bit of the bulk out when you're pressing at the end. And this, see how it makes it not really stiff, but it gives it some stability to it. Makes a perfect cushion cover. Or what you could do, let me get my mat out of the way here. If you have more than one, I'm going to flip my camera around to my design wall. There we go. And I'm going to show you, hopefully you can see this. I'll check. So you could do one down at this end. And then you could put something in the middle. And then you could do another one down at this end. Do pieces of fabric, put a border on it, something like that. And put these together, or put these together, make 3 of them, and put them together, and then put borders on them. And they would make a beautiful table runner for your dining room table or for your buffet, anything like that. So there are our magic pieced flower baskets. Again, you can probably use this, or well, you can use this technique with any quilting block that is done in squares like they are. And I hope you enjoy. I'm going to flip this around again. I hope you enjoyed learning that little technique. It's just a fun little technique. If you try it, you can post pictures at Sew, S-E-W, in Common on my Facebook page. That's my Facebook, Sew in Common. You can find more patches and pieces tutorials, so tutorials on different quilt blocks on my Facebook page, Heartfelt Creative with Diana. It's Heartfelt Creative, 2 words, Heartfelt Creative, and then W/Diana, Heartfelt Creative with Diana. That's my main Facebook page. And on there every Monday at 2:30 Central Time in the US, and that's 8:30 in the UK, you can join me for a little bit of a live session, and I go over making a different block with you. It's just the making of the block. It's not a project, it's not quilted, it's just a way to help you expand your piecing and quilting skills and your design skills, gives you ideas maybe of how to work some things on your own. We just get together, have a great time. Those videos, those live videos, are still live over on my page, Heartfelt Creative with Diana, and you're welcome to go take a look at them. But any pictures and things that you want to post, Sew in Common, S-E-W-I-N-C-O-M-M-O-N, Sew in Common. And a lot of my folks love to put their pictures up there, and then we can share them and enjoy them. And that page is just for sharing our pictures and sharing fun. And the only rule over there is no snarkiness, things like that. Your common, let's be, you know, decent to everybody kind of rules, right? So if you want to join me on a Monday, I'd appreciate it. I also do other live events and other videos. I also have some Zoom workshops over there that you can sign up for if you like. And I have a new website for my business page, for my actual shop, getting ready to go live here in just a couple of weeks. I'm very excited about that. So if you like this video, if you like quilting, you like piecing, and you like doing fun techniques and just hanging out and having a good time with other stitchers, please hit the subscribe button here on the YouTube page.